The invasion came without warning. The sky darkened with alien warships, and their soldiers descended upon Earth like locusts. But they didn't target our cities, our leaders, or our military. No, they struck the hospitals first, the clinics, the research labs. They came for the doctors, the nurses, the medics, Earth's healers. The aliens, the Vroth, had studied humanity. They knew our weaknesses. If they shattered our ability to heal, they believed we would crumble. They thought we were fragile, too dependent on our medicine, our technology, our compassion. They were wrong. The first wave of destruction was devastating. In mere hours, the world's major medical centers were in ruins. The Vroth stormed hospitals, executed surgeons at their operating tables, and set fire to research facilities. Emergency broadcasts filled the airwaves with desperate pleas. "They're killing the doctors! We need help!" before static silenced them. But the Vroth miscalculated. They thought healers were defenseless. They never considered what would happen when the people trained to save lives were given a reason to take them instead. Doctors, surgeons, and combat medics who had spent years stitching up soldiers and patching wounds in war zones didn't just stand by. They adapted. Those who had worked in the shadows of battlefields, who had seen the worst humanity had to offer, became something else entirely. They became the angels of death. Dr. Noah Ward was one of them. A trauma surgeon once dedicated to saving lives, now with a scalpel in one hand and a rifle in the other. The oath he once swore, to do no harm, was now a distant memory, burned away by the sight of his colleagues gunned down in their white coats. In underground bunkers and ruined hospitals, the healers regrouped. Combat medics turned into field commanders. Bioweapons researchers engineered plagues specifically designed to target the Vroth's physiology. Paramedics used their intimate knowledge of the human body to devise the most efficient, agonizing ways to kill. They fought smart. The Vroth expected resistance, but they weren't prepared for enemies who knew how to keep humans alive even when they should have died. The healers understood trauma better than anyone. They knew precisely where to strike to cause maximum suffering. A single strike from a well-placed syringe could make a Vroth soldier's nervous system shut down. A biochemical weapon synthesized from Earth's own deadly pathogens spread through their ranks, liquefying their organs. It wasn't just vengeance, it was justice. Noah led a team through the ruins of what was once St. Jude's Medical Center, now an execution ground for doctors and patients alike. His hands, once so steady for delicate surgeries, held a silenced pistol with deadly precision. They moved in silence, scalpel sharp, erasing Vroth soldiers one by one. Every healer turned warrior had the same thought. You killed our healers. Now you face the ones who decide who lives and dies. The resistance grew. In every country, in every ruined hospital, the healers struck back. The Vroth didn't understand it at first. They had expected soldiers, not scientists, warriors, not men and women in blood-stained scrubs. But in their arrogance, they had overlooked something crucial. A soldier fights because he is trained to. A healer fights because they have nothing left to lose. And that made them terrifying. The tide of the war shifted. The Vroth, once confident in their invasion, now found themselves hunted. Every field hospital they raided became a trap. Every wounded human a potential executioner. Every healer they thought they had killed was replaced by 10 more who had seen too much to remain passive. The angels of death did not forgive. They did not forget, and they would not stop until the last Vroth lay dead. The underground tunnels beneath the ruins of St. Jude's smelled of antiseptic, blood, and burning flesh. Dr. Noah Ward moved swiftly, his team of former surgeons and combat medics following close behind. Their white coats were long gone, replaced by scavenged armor and blood-stained fatigues. They had just cleared the upper floors of the hospital, leaving a trail of Vroth corpses in their wake. The aliens had been caught completely off guard, expecting unarmed doctors, not trained killers who knew the exact pressure points to make their deaths as painful as possible. Noah tapped his earpiece. "Status?" A voice crackled through. Dr. Marina Cho, a former epidemiologist turned resistance leader. "We're in position. Vroth reinforcements are inbound. You have 5 minutes." Noah nodded to his team. "We set the charges, then we move." Dr. Hassan Patel, a former emergency surgeon, knelt by the remains of what used to be the hospital's intensive care unit. He planted explosives along the foundation, rigging them with surgical precision. "This place saved lives for decades. Now it's a tomb." His voice was cold, bitter. Noah crouched next to him, pressing a hand on his shoulder. "They made it one. We're just closing the grave." Hassan gave a sharp nod, finishing his work. They moved fast, exiting through the tunnels as the distant rumble of Vroth warships echoed above. Noah clenched his jaw. The Vroth never sent small patrols to clean up their messes. They would flatten the entire area with plasma bombardments if they suspected resistance forces still lurked inside. But that was the plan. They emerged in a collapsed parking garage a block away, where Marina and the rest of their team were waiting. She had her own squad, ex-military medics and virologists turned biochemical weapon specialists. "Charges are set," Noah said. "Let's give them a warm welcome." Marina smirked, holding up a small detonator. "With pleasure." Above them, the Vroth transport ships landed outside St. Jude's. Their troops poured out, tall insectoid creatures with exoskeletal armor carrying plasma rifles that had burned through Earth's defenses in the first days of the invasion. They moved in formation, approaching the ruined hospital with predatory confidence. Noah could imagine what they were thinking. Another easy slaughter. Another victory. Then Marina pressed the detonator. The world erupted. The ground shook as the remains of the hospital collapsed inward, sending fire, concrete, and bodies skyward. The Vroth soldiers closest to the explosion were vaporized instantly. Those further away were thrown like rag dolls, their armor cracking under the sheer force. Before the dust had even settled, Noah and his team moved. They weren't just going to kill the Vroth. They were going to send a message. The medics turned soldiers hit hard. Hassan took down a wounded Vroth with a single injection, one of their newly developed neurotoxins that turned pain receptors into a never-ending feedback loop. The alien thrashed, clawing at its own face before going still. Marina tossed a vial into the air, shattering it against a Vroth's armor. The alien stumbled, confused, then began convulsing. Their biological warfare division had tailored a virus specifically for their invaders, breaking down their nervous systems within seconds. Noah moved fast, his rifle barking as he gunned down another alien. These things had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. They thought taking out hospitals would cripple them. But what they didn't understand was that healers spent their whole lives fighting death. Now, they were death. The Vroth survivors, broken and panicked, tried to retreat. They wouldn't make it far. Marina stepped over a dying alien, watching as it twitched and spasmed on the ground. "Send a message to their command," she said, voice icy. "Let them know what happens when they target our own." Noah took a deep breath, looking at the carnage around them. This was just the beginning. He turned to his team. "We're not done yet." The angels of death had only just begun their work. The night air was thick with the stench of burned flesh and alien blood. The once pristine streets outside St. Jude's were now a graveyard of Vroth bodies, their exoskeletal armor cracked and leaking dark, foul-smelling ichor. But there was no time to celebrate. The angels of death had more work to do. Noah Ward wiped a smear of alien blood from his face as he turned to Marina. How long before the Vroth realized we're not just scattered survivors? She adjusted her rifle, scanning the darkened skyline. Not long. We just made a hell of a statement. Their command will want answers. Hassan crouched beside one of the fallen Vroth, flipping the creature onto its back with his boot. He inspected its armor, running his fingers over the shattered plating. These aren't just foot soldiers. These were bioengineers. If they were here, they were collecting samples. Noah stiffened. You're saying they weren't just exterminating us? They were studying us? Hassan nodded grimly. Makes sense. First, they wipe out our healers. Now they try to understand how we fight back. They're adapting. A cold weight settled in Noah's chest. Humanity was used to being underestimated. It had been their greatest advantage so far. But if the Vroth were learning from them, then the war was about to get even deadlier. A sharp whistle cut through the night air. It was Dr. Elena Vasquez, their recon specialist and former battlefield medic. She had taken a sniper's perch in a half-crumbled office building nearby. We've got movement, she called down. South side, 5 clicks out. Noah didn't need to ask who. Reinforcements were coming. Time to move, he ordered. We've got another target tonight. Marina raised an eyebrow. Already? They killed our doctors in their beds, slaughtered our nurses in cold blood. Noah shouldered his rifle. We don't stop until every last one of these bastards understands what fear feels like. The team didn't argue. They had all seen too much, lost too much, to hesitate now. They moved quickly through the ruins of the city, navigating through abandoned subway tunnels and collapsed buildings. They had memorized every shortcut, every hidden path. The Vroth had superior technology, but humans had something better: instinct, desperation, and a deep, undying hatred for those who had turned their home into a battlefield. Their next target was a Vroth research outpost, once a children's hospital, now a grotesque lab where the aliens experimented on human captives. Noah had seen the reports. Survivors who had escaped spoke of dissected bodies, of living people strapped to tables, their organs harvested while still awake. The angels of death weren't just going to destroy it. They were going to make the Vroth suffer. As they reached the outskirts, Elena signaled them to stop. Guards on the perimeter. Heat signatures suggest about 20 hostiles. Hassan smirked. Only 20? Almost insulting. Noah pulled a small vial from his vest, a pathogen their biochemists had tailored specifically for the Vroth. It wouldn't just kill them. It would hurt them first. He turned to Marina. Make sure none of them leave alive. She gave a cruel smile. Oh, I intend to. With surgical precision, the angels of death descended on the lab. Tonight, the healers would make the Vroth beg for mercy, and there would be none. The Vroth research outpost loomed in the darkness, its twisted silhouette outlined by the flickering blue lights of alien machinery. Once, this place had been a sanctuary, a children's hospital where parents had whispered reassurances to their sick and injured sons and daughters. Now, it was a slaughterhouse. Noah crouched behind a crumbling ambulance, watching the Vroth patrols move with mechanical efficiency. Their exoskeletal armor gleamed under the artificial lights, their plasma rifles humming softly. They weren't expecting an attack. Why would they? The humans they had captured and experimented on had been broken, screaming husks. They thought Earth's healers were weak. They were about to learn otherwise. Noah tapped his earpiece. Marina, are you in position? Her voice came through, sharp and eager. Roof secured. I've got eyes on the lab's ventilation system. Noah pulled the small vial of pathogen from his vest and handed it to Hassan. Make sure this gets inside. Hassan nodded, his expression unreadable. He had been the one to develop the pathogen, something that wouldn't just kill the Vroth, but make them suffer. Their lungs would fill with fluid, their nervous systems would misfire, leaving them writhing in agony before their bodies shut down. "I'll make it count," Hassan said, disappearing into the shadows. Noah signaled the rest of the team. "We move on my mark. Stealth kills only. We go loud if we have to." They spread out, their movements silent, precise. Years of working in high-stress emergency rooms had trained them for this. Quick reactions, steady hands, and the ability to suppress fear. Elena took out the first guard with a single, quiet shot to the throat. The alien dropped without a sound, its body twitching in the dirt. Hassan reached the ventilation system, carefully pouring the pathogen into the air intake. The effect was almost immediate. The first signs were subtle, a slight shift in the way the Vroth moved, a hesitation in their steps. Then one stumbled, clutching at its throat. Another let out a gurgling hiss, its limbs spasming. Within moments, chaos erupted inside the lab. Vroth scientists collapsed over their instruments, clawing at their own faces. Some tried to flee, but their legs buckled beneath them. They had experimented on humans, cutting them open while they screamed. Now they were the ones choking on their own blood. The angels of death moved in. Noah drove his knife into a Vroth's throat, twisting until the alien stopped struggling. Marina gunned down another, trying to reach for an alarm. Hassan took down a scientist who had once strapped human children to tables and harvested their organs. There was no hesitation, no mercy. They swept through the facility, erasing every last trace of the Vroth's presence. In the deepest chamber they found the survivors, humans strapped to medical slabs, their bodies barely recognizable. Noah clenched his fists, rage burning through him. They had been dissected, experimented on like lab animals. He pressed his earpiece. "We need a medic team here. Now." Marina stood over the last remaining Vroth, a high-ranking scientist who had somehow survived the pathogen. It gurgled, trying to speak, trying to bargain. She leveled her rifle at its head. "This is for every healer you butchered." The shot echoed through the ruined lab. The angels of death had done their work. But the war was far from over. The air inside the ruined laboratory was thick with death. The stench of burnt flesh and alien rot clung to every surface, mixing with the metallic tang of blood, both human and Vroth. The survivors lay broken on operating tables, their eyes sunken, their bodies gaunt. Some were still conscious, barely clinging to life. Others hadn't been so lucky. Noah scanned the room, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spent years in trauma wards, pulling soldiers and civilians back from the brink. But this wasn't a hospital. It was a butcher shop. He approached the nearest survivor, a woman in a torn medical uniform. She had been a nurse, maybe a doctor. Now she was a hollow shell of who she once was. Her arms bore deep incisions where the Vroth had cut into her, probing, experimenting. She lifted her head slightly, her cracked lips parting as if to speak. Noah knelt beside her, his voice gentle despite the fury raging inside him. "You're safe now." Her eyes darted to the bodies of their alien captors, then back to Noah. A weak smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Good," she rasped. Hassan was already moving between the tables, checking vitals, injecting survivors with stabilizers. "Some of them can make it if we get them out now," he said, voice tight. "But we need to move fast." Marina wiped blood from her face, shaking her head. "We don't have enough transport. We weren't expecting to find this many." Noah gritted his teeth. The Vroth had taken everything from these people, their health, their dignity, their future. Now they were supposed to choose who lived and who was left behind. "No one gets left behind," he said firmly. Elena's voice crackled through their comms. Then we better hurry. I just picked up movement. Multiple Vroth patrols inbound. They know what we did here. The words sent an electric jolt through the team. Marina cursed. Damn it, we don't have time for a full evac and a firefight. Noah looked around, his mind racing. There was always a solution. Always a way out. He turned to Hassan. Can you rig the lab's main power core to blow? Hassan glanced at the massive generator in the corner of the room, then nodded. Yeah, but I'll need at least 10 minutes. Noah gripped his rifle. Then we hold the line. Marina and the others took position at the doors, weapons ready. They weren't just fighting for revenge anymore. This wasn't about sending a message. This was about saving what was left of humanity. The first Vroth patrol arrived minutes later, moving in perfect formation. They expected resistance, but they didn't expect what was waiting for them. Marina opened fire first, cutting down the lead soldier before the others could react. Elena's sniper rounds tore through the ranks, dropping aliens before they could even raise their weapons. Noah charged forward, weaving between cover as he fired. A plasma shot barely missed his head, burning through the air with a hiss. He dove behind a wrecked operating table, reloading in seconds. Marina took out another soldier, her shots precise and merciless. How's that bomb coming, Hassan? 2 more minutes, Hassan shouted back. The Vroth, realizing they were losing, shifted tactics. One of them lobbed a plasma grenade toward the survivors, toward the broken people still strapped to their tables. Noah didn't think. He just moved. He dove, grabbing the grenade mid-air and hurling it back. It detonated just as it hit a Vroth soldier, incinerating the alien in a spray of fire and shrapnel. More Vroth poured in. The team was outnumbered, outgunned, but they weren't outmatched. Noah switched to his knife, slamming it into the throat of an advancing soldier. The alien gargled, its thick blood spilling over Noah's hands as he twisted the blade. Marina fought like a woman possessed, ducking plasma fire and taking down enemies with ruthless efficiency. Then Hassan's voice rang out, "Bomb is set! Move!" Noah fired a final shot before turning to the survivors. "Go, get them out!" Marina and Elena helped the weakest ones up, guiding them toward the exit. The team moved fast, dragging survivors through the smoke-filled halls as alarms blared. Noah was the last one out, sprinting through the rubble just as the lab erupted into a massive fireball. The force of the blast knocked him off his feet, sending debris flying. He landed hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. For a moment, the world was nothing but ringing silence. Then Marina was there, grabbing his arm and hauling him up. "On your feet, Doc." Noah sucked in a breath, nodding. The battle was over. The Vroth had lost another stronghold, but this war was far from finished. He looked at the survivors, at the broken but living people they had saved, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to hope. The angels of death had won tonight, and they were just getting started. The survivors were weak, but they were alive. That was enough. Noah and the others led them through the wreckage, moving fast through the ruined streets. Smoke and fire choked the air behind them, the remains of the Vroth lab still burning. The city, once a place of life and progress, was now a broken skeleton of its former self. Skyscrapers had crumbled. Roads were torn apart. The only lights came from distant alien warships patrolling the skies. Elena, scouting ahead, suddenly raised a fist. The group froze. "We've got trouble," she muttered. She adjusted her scope, peering through the dim haze. "Vroth dropships about a mile out. They're searching for us." Marina cursed under her breath. "Figures. We make too much noise and they start paying attention." Noah looked at the survivors, malnourished, barely able to stand, their bodies marked with surgical scars. If the Vroth caught up with them now, there was no way they could fight. "We need a way out," he said. Hassan, checking his map, pointed to an old underground transit station a few blocks away. "If we make it there, we can lose them in the tunnels." Noah nodded. "Then we move. Keep the wounded in the center. We defend them with our lives." They moved quickly, slipping through alleyways, keeping to the shadows. The city's silence was eerie, broken only by the occasional distant roar of alien engines. Every step felt like a countdown to disaster. Then, just as they reached the entrance to the transit station, Elena hissed, "Incoming!" A Vroth patrol had spotted them. The aliens moved fast, their plasma rifles already raised, but the Angels of Death were faster. Marina dropped 2 with quick, precise shots. Hassan threw a small canister, one of their biochemical weapons. It burst mid-air, releasing a gas that made the Vroth convulse violently, their own nervous systems betraying them. Noah pulled a survivor to cover, shielding them from stray plasma fire. "Get inside!" he shouted. The team fought like surgeons performing a flawless operation, every movement precise, every shot intentional. But the Vroth kept coming. More dropships loomed overhead. If they stayed out in the open any longer, they were dead. Noah made a decision. "We cover the retreat. Elena, get them underground." She didn't argue. She grabbed the survivors, guiding them down the broken escalators into the dark tunnels below. Hassan followed, laying down suppressing fire. Noah and Marina stayed behind, taking down the last few Vroth soldiers before retreating into the underground. The moment they stepped inside, Hassan detonated a charge, collapsing part of the entrance behind them. Silence. The only sound was their own heavy breathing. The survivors were exhausted, slumped against the cold walls of the tunnel. They had made it, for now. Marina wiped sweat from her forehead. "That was too close." Noah looked at the survivors, their eyes filled with fear and exhaustion. These people had been to hell and back, but they were still alive, and as long as they were alive, the fight wasn't over. He turned to his team. "We find a safe house, we regroup, and then?" Marina smirked. "Then we make the Vroth wish they'd never set foot on this planet." Noah nodded. The Angels of Death weren't just survivors. They were the storm that was coming. And the Vroth had no idea what was waiting for them in the darkness. The underground tunnels were damp, dark, and stifling, but at least they were safe, for now. The Angels of Death had managed to slip past the Vroth's patrols, leading the rescued survivors deeper into the labyrinth of abandoned subway systems beneath the ruined city. Noah moved cautiously, rifle raised, scanning the shadows ahead. The old transit tunnels had become a graveyard over the months since the invasion. Bodies lay forgotten in the corners, some human, some alien. Some had been killed in battle. Others had simply wasted away, forgotten by both sides. Hassan walked beside him, checking a handheld scanner. "Oxygen levels are good. No sign of airborne contaminants." Marina snorted. "For once, we're not breathing in alien filth." Elena, scouting ahead, suddenly held up a fist. "Something's up ahead," she whispered. Noah crept forward, peering down the tunnel. A dim, flickering light illuminated a makeshift barricade. Behind it, human figures huddled together, weapons barely visible in the gloom. "Survivors," Marina murmured. Elena slung her rifle over her shoulder and stepped forward, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "We're not Vroth, we're human." A moment of silence stretched between them. Then a voice, raspy, weary, called out, "Prove it." Noah stepped into the dim light, lifting his hands as well. "We just tore down a Vroth research lab. We've been fighting them from the start." Another pause. Then the barricade shifted, and a man stepped forward. His clothes were ragged, his face gaunt, but his eyes were sharp, filled with the kind of hardened determination only survivors carried. "If that's true," he said, "then you're the first good news we've had in a long time." Noah and his team lowered their weapons as more people emerged from the shadows. There were at least 30 of them. Men, women, even a few children. All of them bore the same haunted look. The man who had spoken extended a hand. "Name's Daniel Carter. I used to be a firefighter. Now?" His lips curled into a bitter smirk. "Now I just try to keep these people alive." Noah shook his hand. "Doctor?" Noah Ward. "Same here." Daniel exhaled, nodding toward the survivors behind them. "Looks like you brought more mouths to feed." "They were prisoners," Marina said, voice hard. "Vroth were experimenting on them." A flicker of anger crossed Daniel's face. "Figures. They hit us hard in the beginning. Took out the hospitals first. Guess they wanted to make sure no one could patch up the resistance." Noah exchanged a look with his team. "That's why we're still fighting. We lost our hospitals, but we didn't lose our healers." Daniel studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "We have supplies. Not much, but enough to help." He turned toward the survivors and gestured them forward. "Come on, we'll get you fed." The group moved deeper into the tunnels, where the survivors had set up a crude but functional base. Old subway cars had been turned into shelters. Scavenged medical supplies were stacked against the walls. Hassan immediately set to work tending to the sick and wounded, assisted by Marina and Elena. Noah sat with Daniel, watching as his team worked. "You've been fighting a long time," Daniel said quietly. Noah nodded. "We all have." Daniel leaned back against the cold tunnel wall. "You really took down a Vroth research lab?" Noah's jaw tightened. "We made them suffer for what they did." A slow grin spread across Daniel's face. "Good. The Vroth think they own this planet." He exhaled sharply. "But they don't know what humans are like when you push us too far." Noah met his gaze. "Then maybe it's time to show them." Daniel nodded. "I think we can help each other." The Angels of Death had gained new allies, and the war was far from over. The underground base bustled with quiet but efficient movement. The survivors, once starving and hopeless, now had a purpose. The Angels of Death had reignited something in them. Rage. Noah sat with Daniel, poring over a rough hand-drawn map of the city. It was outdated, but it showed key locations: old military bunkers, collapsed highways, even a few marked Vroth occupied. Daniel tapped a spot near the city's industrial district. "Here. The Vroth have been using this facility for months. Oh, we think it's a supply hub. Food, weapons, fuel." He looked up. "We take that, we cut off a major artery." Noah studied the map. It made sense. The Vroth had started fortifying key locations, which meant they were no longer as confident as they had been at the start of the invasion. They were preparing for long-term occupation. Not if the Angels of Death had anything to say about it. Marina joined them, wiping grease from her hands. "Got the radios working. Short range only, but it's better than nothing." Elena leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You're really thinking of hitting a supply hub with a bunch of half-starved civilians?" Daniel frowned. "We're not civilians anymore. We've been fighting since day one." Noah nodded. "And we have experience. With your people and ours, we stand a chance." Marina smirked. "I like those odds." Hassan stepped in, his expression grim. "The prisoners we rescued, some won't make it. The Vroth did too much damage, but the rest, they want in." Noah wasn't surprised. Anyone who had survived the horrors of the Vroth labs wouldn't just sit back and hide. They wanted vengeance. Daniel exhaled. "Then we move. We plan the attack. Hit them fast and hard." Noah nodded. We turn their own tactics against them. Surgical strikes, maximum damage. A fire burned in Daniel's eyes. Then let's make the Vroth bleed. The attack was set for the next night. The team moved through the ruins under cover of darkness, slipping past Vroth patrols. The industrial complex loomed in the distance, surrounded by energy barriers and automated turrets. Noah whispered into his comm, "Positions?" Elena responded first. "Sniper ready." Hassan, "Charges set at the south entrance." Marina, "North side is clear, ready to breach." Daniel and his fighters were stationed at the west entrance, waiting for the signal. Noah inhaled. "Go." The first explosion ripped through the south gate, sending shockwaves through the ground. Alarms blared. The Vroth rushed to respond, right into the ambush. Elena's rifle cracked, dropping the first commander before he could give an order. Hassan triggered more explosives, collapsing one of the guard towers. Marina and Noah moved fast, breaching the main facility. Inside, rows of supplies, food, water, ammunition, were stacked high. They had everything the resistance needed. But the Vroth weren't going down without a fight. More of them poured in, screeching orders in their guttural language. Plasma fire erupted, scorching metal and flesh alike. Noah ducked behind cover, returning fire. "Move fast! Take what we can!" Daniel and his fighters pushed in, engaging in brutal close combat. A survivor, one of the former prisoners, lunged at a Vroth soldier, driving a stolen scalpel deep into its throat. The alien gurgled, its black blood spilling onto the floor. Marina grabbed a case of explosives. "We blow this place when we're done." Noah gave a sharp nod. "Make sure they don't get it back." The battle was chaos, but the humans fought harder. They had lost too much to back down now. Hassan rigged the final charges as the last of the Vroth fell. 5 minutes till boom time." The team grabbed what they could, then ran. As they cleared the perimeter, the facility erupted into flames, sending debris flying. The Vroth's supply chain was in ruins. Daniel, breathing hard, looked at the destruction. A slow grin spread across his face. That felt good. Noah exhaled. And we're just getting started. The war had shifted. The Angels of Death weren't just survivors. They were the reckoning. The fire raged behind them, lighting up the night sky like a beacon of defiance. Smoke billowed into the air, thick and black, choking out the stars. The Vroth's supply hub was gone, reduced to little more than rubble and ashes. Noah and the others moved fast, carrying what supplies they could salvage. They had taken food, water, medical kits, enough to keep the underground resistance alive for weeks. But more importantly, they had struck a blow that the Vroth would feel. As they disappeared into the ruins, Noah tapped his comm. "Everyone accounted for?" One by one, the confirmations came through. "Sniper team is clear," Elena reported. "Explosives crew safe," Hassan added. Marina jogged up beside Noah, smirking. "No casualties on our side. Not bad for a bunch of weak humans." Noah allowed himself a brief, tired grin, but the weight of reality settled on his shoulders quickly. The Vroth weren't just going to let this go unanswered. They would retaliate. And when they did, it wouldn't be small. Daniel fell into step beside him, his face still flushed from the fight. "We need to get underground, fast." Noah nodded. The tunnels were their best bet. If the Vroth launched an aerial strike, the underground bases would shield them. The group moved quickly through the wreckage of the city, keeping low. They had almost reached an entrance to the subway tunnels when Elena suddenly stopped, her rifle snapping up. "Wait." Her voice was tense. Noah felt it before he saw it. A shift in the air, a sudden unnatural silence. Then, in the distance, a low hum. Not dropships, not patrols, something worse, Scanners are picking up movement, Hassan muttered. Big movement. Daniel frowned. How big? Hassan's face darkened as he checked the readings. Mech big. Noah's stomach turned to ice. The Vroth had unleashed their war machines. The first impact hit like a bomb, sending shockwaves through the ground. Dust and rubble rained down from the crumbling buildings as the massive Vroth war mechs stomped into view. Towering figures of metal and organic plating, their eyes glowed with eerie blue energy. There were 3 of them, each nearly 15 feet tall. Their arms ended in massive plasma cannons, and their legs crushed the pavement beneath them. They moved with terrifying efficiency, scanning, searching, hunting. The Vroth weren't playing games anymore. Marina swore. You've got to be kidding me! Elena steadied her rifle. Can we take them? Hassan grimaced. Not with what we've got. Maybe if we had heavy explosives, but we used most of them back at the supply hub. Noah gritted his teeth. The mechs were sweeping the area, scanning the wreckage, looking for them. If they didn't move now, they'd be trapped. He turned to Daniel. How far to the tunnel entrance? 2 blocks, Daniel said. But if those things spot us, we won't make it. Noah looked at the mechs, then at the team. The survivors were already exhausted. They couldn't fight these things head on, but they could outthink them. He took a breath. We split up. Draw them away. Marina's head snapped toward him. You want to split up? They're hunting us like animals, Noah said. So we act like them, scatter, confuse them, lead them in different directions. We regroup at the tunnels. Daniel hesitated. That's a gamble. Noah met his eyes. We don't have another choice. Daniel exhaled, then nodded. All right, we do this fast. They broke into teams. Elena and Hassan took the left flank, moving toward a series of collapsed buildings. Marina and Daniel's fighters veered right, slipping through the alleyways. Noah took the survivors, leading them straight ahead, toward what looked like an abandoned office building. Then he fired a single shot into the air. The sound cracked through the night like a gunshot in a dead city. The mechs instantly responded, their heads snapping toward the noise. A deep, mechanical growl rumbled from their cores. Then they charged. Noah and his team ran. The office building was half collapsed, its upper floors barely holding together. As Noah led the survivors inside, he could hear the ground shaking behind him. The mechs were closing in. We need to slow them down, someone gasped. Noah spotted a stairwell and turned. Up! Go! They scrambled up the ruined steps, climbing higher. The mechs crashed through the lower floors, tearing through desks and walls like they were nothing. Elena's voice crackled through the comms. We lost one. The other 2 are still hunting, Hassan added. We've got a clear path to the tunnels, but you need to move. Noah looked at the survivors, panting, terrified. They weren't soldiers. They couldn't keep running forever. He made a decision. He pressed his comm. Hassan, tell me we still have something explosive left. A pause, then Hassan's voice, low and grim. I have one last charge. Noah exhaled. Good. Get ready to drop this building on them. The survivors reached the top floor as the mechs stormed the lower levels. Noah turned, heart pounding, as he saw the first one force its way up the stairwell, its glowing eyes locked onto them. Noah activated his comm. Now! A second later, a boom rocked the entire structure. The charge detonated near the base of the building, shaking the already unstable walls. Cracks splintered through the ceiling, the entire frame of the office groaning under its own weight. Noah didn't hesitate. Jump! They leaped from the top floor as the building collapsed. The mech inside let out a screeching roar before it was buried beneath tons of steel and concrete. The second mech, still outside, was caught in the debris, crushed beneath falling rubble. Noah hit the ground hard, rolling onto his side. Pain flared through his ribs, but he was alive. The survivors around him groaned, shaken but breathing. From a nearby alley, Marina and Hassan appeared, weapons raised. Noah coughed and pushed himself up. "Report," Hassan grinned. "Mechs are gone. We won." Daniel jogged over, laughing breathlessly. "I can't believe that worked." Noah took a shaky breath, looking at the ruins of the building, then at the exhausted survivors. They had fought the impossible and survived. Marina clapped him on the back. "Not bad, Doc. You might just be crazier than the rest of us." Noah chuckled, shaking his head. The war wasn't over. Not even close. But tonight? Tonight, the Vroth learned something new. Earth's healers had been attacked, their hospitals burned, their people slaughtered, but the ones who were left? They weren't healers anymore. They were vengeance, and the angels of death were only just getting started. The dust settled over the ruins of the fallen building, a thick gray fog mixing with the smoke and fire still burning from their last attack. The silence was eerie. The mechs had been destroyed. The battle was over, but Noah knew better. The Vroth never let a loss go unanswered. He pulled himself to his feet, ignoring the ache in his ribs. Around him, Marina, Hassan, and Daniel's fighters were checking the survivors, making sure no one was too injured to move. Elena's voice came through the comms, sharp and urgent. "You need to run, now!" Noah felt the dread settle in his chest. "What is it?" "More incoming," she snapped. "Not foot soldiers, not patrols, annihilation squads." Marina's expression darkened. "Shit." The Vroth didn't just want revenge. They wanted erasure. Noah turned to Daniel. "We need to get underground, now." Daniel didn't argue. He waved his people forward, leading them toward the subway tunnel entrance a few blocks away. The group moved fast, pushing through the rubble as the distant hum of approaching warships filled the air. Elena's voice came again. "They're bringing flamethrowers!" Hassan cursed. "They're going to burn the whole block to the ground." Noah clenched his jaw. The Vroth didn't just want to kill them. They wanted to make an example of them. To turn this part of the city into a warning for anyone who still dared to resist. Not if the angels of death had anything to say about it. They reached the subway entrance just as the first warship came into view. A massive, black monstrosity hovered above the ruins, its engines pulsing with energy. Figures descended from the ship. Tall, armored Vroth, their weapons glowing with deadly heat. "Go, go, go!" Noah barked, shoving the survivors down into the tunnels. Hassan and Marina laid down suppressing fire, covering the retreat. The first wave of Vroth soldiers rushed forward, plasma bolts streaking through the air. Elena's sniper rifle cracked from above, dropping one before it could fire. "Hurry up!" she called over the comm. Noah grabbed the last survivor, a young woman barely able to stand, and pulled her into the dark tunnel. The moment his boots hit the concrete, he shouted into his comm, "Elena, fall back!" A second later she appeared, sliding down the entrance just as a firebomb exploded behind her. The streets above were engulfed in flame. They ran deeper into the tunnels. The heat from the fire above made the air stifling, but they didn't stop. They couldn't. Daniel led them to a hidden passageway, concealed behind rusted maintenance doors. His people had spent months reinforcing the underground, creating safe zones far from the Vroth's reach. They burst into a larger chamber, one of the old train platforms that had been converted into a makeshift base. Dozens of survivors were there, huddled in groups, their eyes wide with fear as the new arrivals stormed in. Daniel turned to his people. "Get the wounded to the medics. We need everyone ready to move in case they find us." Noah slumped against a pillar, catching his breath. Marina dropped beside him, wiping sweat from her face. "We lost the surface," she muttered. "For now." Noah exhaled, looking around at the exhausted survivors, the makeshift hospital corners, the scavenged weapons piled in the corner. The war wasn't over, but the battle had shifted. The Vroth thought they had crushed humanity's spirit, that by wiping out the healers they had broken their resistance. But all they had done was give birth to something worse. Noah pushed himself up, determination burning in his chest. He looked at Daniel, Marina, Hassan, Elena, the people who had fought beside him. "This isn't just survival anymore," he said. "It's a war." Daniel nodded. "Damn right it is." Noah turned to the survivors, his voice carrying through the chamber. "The Vroth think they've won. They think we're weak." He shook his head. "They don't realize that the ones who are left? We don't fear them anymore." The survivors listened, their eyes lighting up with something beyond fear, something dangerous. Hope. Marina grinned. "What's the plan, Doc?" Noah looked towards the tunnels, toward the city that still burned above them. "We stop running." He clenched his fists. "We hunt them back." The Angels of Death had spent too long in the shadows. It was time to remind the Vroth why humans were meant to survive. The chamber grew quiet, the survivors' breaths steadying as Noah's words sank in. The air was heavy with the weight of their losses, but beneath it burned a spark of defiance. The Angels of Death weren't just a resistance anymore. They were a force, a storm brewing in the dark. Days turned into weeks in the underground. Noah, Daniel, Marina, Hassan, and Elena worked tirelessly, forging the survivors into a unified front. Scavenged weapons were repaired, maps updated, and plans sharpened with surgical precision. The Vroth might have taken the surface, but the tunnels became humanity's veins, pulsing with life, strategy, and vengeance. The final strike was planned meticulously. Word had spread through the underground networks. The Vroth were consolidating their forces at a central command hub, a towering structure in the heart of the city. It was their brain, their nerve center. Destroy it, and the invasion would falter. Noah stood before the assembled fighters, hundreds now, drawn from every corner of the ruined city. Doctors, firefighters, teachers, parents, all turned warriors by necessity. The survivors they'd rescued from the labs stood among them, scars visible, but spirits unbroken. "We've lost everything," Noah said, his voice steady and commanding. "Our homes, our families, our peace. They took our healers and thought that would break us. But we're still here, and tonight we take it all back." A roar of agreement echoed through the chamber. The attack began at dusk. The Angels of Death emerged from the tunnels like phantoms, striking with lethal precision. Elena's snipers took out perimeter guards from the shadows. Hassan's explosives shattered the hub's outer defenses, sending Vroth soldiers scrambling. Marina and Daniel led the frontal assault, cutting through the enemy with relentless fury. Noah moved with a smaller team, slipping inside the hub. They carried the last of their tailored pathogens, Hassan's masterpiece, a biochemical weapon designed to target the Vroth's core physiology. If they could release it into the hub's ventilation system, it would spread to every warship, every outpost, every corner of the alien army. The interior was a maze of alien technology, pulsing with blue light. Vroth commanders barked orders, unaware of the intruders until it was too late. Noah's team fought silently, knives and silenced pistols carving a path to the central chamber. They reached the ventilation controls just as alarms blared. A Vroth elite guard, towering, armored, and armed with dual plasma blades, blocked their way. Its eyes glowed with cold intelligence. Noah didn't hesitate. He charged, ducking a swipe of the blade and driving his knife into a seam in its armor. The alien roared, staggering, but Noah twisted the blade deeper, using every ounce of his surgical knowledge to find its weakness. It collapsed, black ichor pooling around it. "Hassan, now!" Noah shouted. Hassan slammed the pathogen vial into the system, smashing it against the intake. A faint mist spread through the vents, invisible but deadly. The effect was immediate. Across the hub, Vroth soldiers began to choke, their exoskeletons cracking as their bodies betrayed them. The commanders in the central chamber fell, clawing at their throats, their war cries turning to gurgles. Noah activated his comm. "It's done. Pull back." Outside, the tide turned. The Vroth's coordination crumbled as their leaders died. Warships faltered in the sky, some crashing into the ruins below. The Angels of Death pressed their advantage, driving the remaining forces into chaos. By dawn, the hub was a smoldering ruin. The Vroth army, once an unstoppable wave, was fractured, leaderless and dying. Noah stood atop the wreckage, staring out at the city. Smoke still rose from the battlefield, but the sky was clear of warships for the first time in months. Beside him, Marina, Hassan, Elena, and Daniel watched in silence. "We did it," Marina said, her voice a mix of disbelief and pride. "Not yet," Noah replied, "but we've given humanity a chance." Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. "That's more than we had before you showed up." Hassan grinned. "They underestimated us. Big mistake." Elena slung her rifle over her shoulder. "So what now, Doc?" Noah looked at the survivors, the fighters who had become his family. The war wasn't fully won. Pockets of Vroth would linger, and rebuilding would take years. But for the first time, he could see a future beyond the fight. "We heal," he said simply, "and we make sure they never come back." The Angels of Death had been born in rage, forged in loss, and tempered in battle. They had taken back their world, not as healers, but as warriors who knew the value of every life they'd saved. The Vroth had invaded expecting prey. Instead, they'd awakened a reckoning, and Earth would never fall again. The Galactic Council had convened in a massive hall carved from gleaming, translucent crystal. Representatives from dozens of species sat in tiers, their varied forms shimmering under the soft glow of luminescent plants. At the center, Grand Admiral Creek, a towering insectoid with a hard, chitinous shell and razor-sharp mandibles, addressed the council with authority. "The humans are weak," he hissed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "Their technology is primitive. Their fleets are scattered. Now is the time to strike before they expand any further into our territories." A murmur rippled through the council as some nodded in agreement. The humans were a relatively new species, spreading faster than any race had seen before. Their ships were smaller, less advanced, and relied on outdated weaponry. But their determination was undeniable, and they had a reputation for being fiercely protective of their colonies. From the shadows at the back of the hall, a figure stirred, a slender being with iridescent skin and deep, dark eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless lifetimes. Zaltek, the oldest member of the council, slowly moved forward, leaning on a staff crafted from the bones of a fallen tyrant beast. His voice was soft, but filled with a chilling certainty. "You speak of attacking the humans as if they are prey, Creek. But have you truly understood what they are?" Creek scoffed, clicking his mandibles disdainfully. "They are barely evolved mammals, Zaltek. What threat could they possibly pose to the might of the collective?" Zaltek's eyes flashed with a hint of sadness. "You mistake resilience for weakness, Admiral. Do not let their lack of sophistication deceive you. I have encountered humans before, during the siege of Arcadia." A heavy silence fell over the room, and even Creek hesitated. The siege of Arcadia was a legendary battle, one that had been buried under 100 years of shame and secrecy. Very few had survived to tell the tale. Zaltek continued, his voice dropping to a somber whisper. "Our forces descended on Arcadia in numbers too great to count. The human colony was small, a fledgling outpost with scarcely 200 soldiers. We thought victory was assured, and at first it was. We leveled their defenses, tore through their communication systems, and prepared to claim the planet. But that night, he paused, the memory seeming to weigh on him like a crushing stone. That night, they did not run. They did not surrender. They fought back, not like soldiers, but like beasts possessed by a fury I have never seen. They set fire to their own cities to draw us in, ambushed us in the burning ruins, used their own dying comrades as bait to catch us off guard. I saw humans charge directly into our energy cannons, just to reach our gunners and tear them apart with their bare hands. Creek's mandibles clicked uncertainly. But they fell, did they not? We claimed the world. Zaltek shook his head. We claimed ashes. When dawn came, there was nothing left but rubble and silence. Not a single human remained alive, because they fought until the last breath. Their message was clear. No matter the odds, they would rather die than kneel. One of the other council members, a shimmering aquatic being named Vera, spoke up hesitantly. But that was only one colony. Surely the greater human worlds are more cautious? Zaltek gave a bitter laugh. You think Arcadia was an anomaly? I have heard whispers from the stars about how human fleets form shields of their own wrecked ships, how they fight even when hope is gone, as if surrender is a concept they refuse to grasp. Their generals burn their own worlds to keep them from falling into enemy hands. If we strike at Earth itself, do you truly believe they will bow? Number. They will burn their entire solar system to dust before yielding to conquerors. A chill settled over the room. Creek's confidence wavered, but he snarled in defiance. We have faced warriors before. The Zarian Horde, the Red Legion, they all fell. Humans will be no different. Zaltek fixed him with a look of such intensity that Creek instinctively took a step back. You misunderstand. The Zarians sought power. The Red Legion fought for conquest. But humans, they fight not for victory, but for survival. And when survival is at stake, they become relentless. They will hunt you to the edges of the universe. You may win a battle, Admiral, but you will never escape the wrath that follows. The council chamber remained deathly quiet. Creek, visibly shaken, glanced around at the uncertain faces of the other representatives. For the first time, doubt seeped into his mind. Zaltek gave a final warning. Attack the humans if you wish. Just know that when you do, you will be unleashing a force that will never rest until every last one of us is obliterated. Do not mistake their kindness for weakness or their peace for fear. Once provoked, they will not stop. Not ever. The council remained silent, each member processing the gravity of Zaltek's words. And in that quiet, Creek could almost feel the shadows of human rage looming on the horizon. Silent, relentless, and inevitable. Days passed after the council meeting, but the debate continued to simmer. Creek's confidence had been rattled, but his ambition remained unbroken. He spent his time in the war chambers, surrounded by holographic projections of human territories, calculating strategies to minimize losses while securing maximum gain. His pride demanded action, but Zaltek's warning lingered in the back of his mind like an echo that wouldn't fade. One evening, as he reviewed reports from intelligence probes near human colonies, Creek was interrupted by his second-in-command, Captain Jex, a lean, wiry creature with translucent wings that shimmered under the chamber lights. "Admiral," Jex rasped, his tone respectful, yet cautious. "Our scouts have detected unusual activity near the Andromeda perimeter. Human ships, war-class destroyers, patrolling in tighter formations than usual." Creek straightened, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Preparing for a strike, perhaps, or sensing our intentions? It's unclear, Jex replied. Their movements don't suggest offense. It's more like they're watching. Waiting. Creek dismissed his concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. They're paranoid. They must have caught wind of our deliberations. It doesn't change our plans. Jex hesitated, clearly unsettled. Permission to speak freely, Admiral? Creek gave a short, begrudging nod. What if Zaltek is right? I've analyzed human combat records from a minor skirmishes. When cornered, they show a level of ferocity unmatched by most species. And Arcadia, it's more than just a ghost story. I've read the survivor logs. The brutality wasn't strategic. It was pure, unyielding survival. If we provoke them, we might face that same madness on a galactic scale. Creek's eyes narrowed, his pride bristling at the implied doubt. Are you suggesting we abandon our plans out of fear? Jex dipped his head submissively. Not fear, Admiral, caution. We underestimate them at our peril. Creek lashed out, his claws scraping against the metallic surface of the strategy table. Caution breeds stagnation. The collective thrives because we take risks. Humans are spreading like vermin, colonizing unclaimed worlds with reckless abandon. If we don't strike now, we risk being overwhelmed in the future. Jex remained silent, knowing better than to argue further. Creek's ambition would not be tamed by reason. The Admiral was determined to prove that the fear of humans was an old warrior's delusion, a relic of a failed conquest long past. Send the command to the fleet, Creek ordered sharply. We will commence our first strike at New Europa. It's a major colony with advanced facilities and strategic positioning. If we can cripple their production capabilities there, Earth's defenses will weaken significantly. Jex acknowledged the order and moved to relay it, though his wings quivered with unease. Creek couldn't afford hesitation, not when his reputation hung on proving the humans were nothing more than animals wrapped in iron. As the collective's fleet mobilized, Zaltek watched from a distance, his ancient eyes fixed on the vast armada gathering above the capital world. He knew what was coming, and his spirit grew heavy with foreboding. Walking the winding corridors of the council complex, he encountered Vera, the aquatic diplomat who had been present during his warning. She looked at him with curious trepidation. "You think they will attack regardless," she stated, her voice like the whisper of flowing water. Zaltek nodded, leaning on his staff. Pride is a poison that blinds the ambitious. Creek cannot stand the idea that a lesser species could instill such fear. He must prove himself superior, even if it means courting disaster. Vera considered his words. What will happen when they strike? Will the humans truly retaliate with such wrath? Zaltek closed his eyes, memories of Arcadia washing over him like a dark tide. They will retaliate, yes, not with fear or despair, but with a single, unwavering purpose, to eradicate the threat entirely. I have witnessed it once, and that memory is etched into my soul. Creek thinks conquest will be swift. Instead, he will ignite a fire that will consume us all. As he spoke, the Armada began its journey, hundreds of warships vanishing into hyperspace, bound for New Europa. Vera could sense the dread thickening in the air. "Can they really win against our might?" she asked, almost hoping Zaltek would deny it. The old being sighed. Victory is not a matter of strength alone. Humans are relentless because they fight for something we cannot understand. A soul-deep need to remain free, even if freedom demands unthinkable sacrifices. They will turn every loss into fuel for vengeance, and they will pursue us to the ends of the stars. Vera shivered at the thought. Then Creek is dooming us. Zaltek didn't reply, his heart aching for the countless lives about to be snuffed out. He knew the collective was walking into a nightmare, a nightmare born not just of human wrath, but of their unbreakable will to survive. As the stars shimmered in the vastness of space, he could only pray that the lesson would not come too late. And so, the fate of countless worlds hung on the precipice, waiting for the moment when fire and fury would engulf the galaxy. The journey to New Europa took mere hours through hyperspace corridors, and the collective's armada emerged from the rippling void like a swarm of shimmering insects, each ship bristling with weapons and armored plating. At the head of the formation, Creek stood on the command deck of the flagship Dominator, his multifaceted eyes scanning the holographic displays as data streamed in from scout drones. "Report," he barked, his mandibles clicking with a predatory eagerness. Jex, standing at a nearby console, read through the data with a tense expression. "New Europa's planetary defenses are active, orbital platforms and ground-based missile arrays. Human fleet presence is minimal, only 3 war-class destroyers and a handful of support craft." Creek gave a satisfied hiss. "Pathetic. Begin bombardment protocols. Target their orbital defenses first." As the collective ships aligned, charging their plasma cannons and particle disruptors, Creek allowed himself a moment of triumph. New Europa was a key human colony. Taking it would cripple their production and shake their morale. It would be the first step toward breaking their spirit. "All batteries, fire!" Creek commanded. Lances of searing energy erupted from the collective warships, streaking through the void and hammering the orbital platforms. One by one they exploded in brilliant fireballs, scattering debris into the atmosphere. The human warships responded, firing railgun projectiles and guided missiles, but their attacks glanced off the reinforced shields of the collective vessels. Creek sneered at the pitiful resistance. "Jex, send the ground forces. Crush any remaining pockets of resistance and secure the planetary capital." "Yes, Admiral," Jex replied, though his tone was cautious. "But there's something strange." "What now?" Creek growled. Jex pointed to a readout displaying human communication frequencies. "They're broadcasting on all channels, open frequencies, encoded and unencoded. It's a distress signal, but not directed to any military command. It's broadcasting to civilian networks, local colonies, even deep space outposts." Creek scoffed. "Desperation. They're hoping for reinforcements that won't come. Ignore it." But as the message continued to loop, Creek's curiosity got the better of him. He gestured for Jex to play it through the command speakers. A human voice, calm and steady despite the chaos, filled the bridge. "This is Commander Elena Price of New Europa Defense Command. We are under attack by hostile alien forces. Civilians are advised to seek shelter in reinforced zones. To any human outposts or colonies receiving this message, do not respond. Maintain your defensive perimeters. Remember Arcadia. We will not surrender. We will not yield. New Europa stands." The transmission repeated, and Creek felt a flicker of irritation. Bold words for a doomed colony. "Jex, have the ground forces report as soon as they secure the capital." As Jex relayed the orders, Creek couldn't help but notice something unsettling about the transmission. The way the human spoke, calm, unbroken, reminded him of Zaltek's warning. They fought for survival, not victory. He pushed the thought aside, unwilling to let doubt poison his triumph. Minutes passed, then hours. Reports trickled in from the surface, heavy resistance, ambushes, guerrilla tactics. Collective soldiers found the human defenses fragmented but tenacious, often fighting from the ruins of their own homes or underground bunkers. An entire battalion had been wiped out by civilians wielding improvised explosives. Creek's frustration grew as the ground war bogged down, refusing to resolve as quickly as he'd expected. "Why are they resisting so fiercely?" Creek snarled. "Their defeat is inevitable." Jex's wings twitched nervously. Perhaps they know something we don't. Their forces are deliberately drawing our units deeper into the city ruins. It's almost as if they're preparing for... A sudden alert blared through the command deck, proximity sensors flashing red. Creek whirled toward the tactical map, his eyes widening as dozens of new contacts appeared at the system's edge. Ships, human ships, dropping out of hyperspace in tight, aggressive formations. Jex's voice was a mixture of shock and fear. "Admiral, it's the Earth Defense Fleet. 3 dreadnoughts and at least 50 support vessels. They've surrounded our perimeter." Creek's mandibles clicked furiously. "How did they respond so fast? We jammed their signals." Jex looked pale, his wings trembling. "The distress call, it wasn't a plea for help. It was bait. They knew we would attack New Europa, and they let us trap ourselves on the surface while they mobilized the fleet." Creek's mind raced, but the realization hit him like a blow. The humans had anticipated the attack, sacrificing the colony to draw his forces in and surround them. His pride had blinded him to the possibility, and now the hunters had become the hunted. "Retreat!" Creek commanded, but even as he shouted the order, the human ships opened fire. Kinetic lances and plasma beams tore through the collective formation, and explosions blossomed across the void. Human fighters darted through the chaos, targeting engines and weapons systems with ruthless precision. The Dominator shook violently as a projectile slammed into its shields, sending sparks cascading from overloaded consoles. Creek gripped the railing, his arrogance crumbling into desperation. How could they plan this so flawlessly?" he muttered, unable to comprehend how his superior fleet had been outmaneuvered. Jex stared at the carnage outside, his voice hollow. "You didn't listen to Zaltek. They don't fight like us. They don't fight for power or pride. They fight to survive. You cornered them, and now they're fighting like animals with nothing to lose." Creek's resolve shattered as he watched his mighty armada being torn apart piece by piece. The human dreadnoughts pressed their advantage, cutting off any chance of retreat. The Admiral knew he had made a fatal mistake, one that would be carved into the annals of history as the day the collective underestimated the wrath of humanity. And through it all, the transmission from New Europa continued to echo through the speakers, a calm and unwavering declaration of defiance. "We will not surrender. We will not yield. New Europa stands." Chaos engulfed the collective fleet as human warships pressed their advantage, hammering the disoriented aliens from all sides. Creek watched in disbelief as his armada, once the pride of the collective, shattered under the relentless human assault. His claws trembled as he gripped the railing, his mind racing for a way out. "Admiral, shields are down to 20%! Jex shouted over the blaring alarms. "Hull breaches reported on decks 3 and 4. Creek forced himself to think, but his thoughts were a tangled mess of rage and fear. "Redirect power to engines. Prepare for an emergency jump." Jex hesitated, his wings fluttering anxiously. "Admiral, the hyperspace matrix is compromised. We won't be able to..." The ship lurched violently as another volley slammed into the hull, and the lights flickered before stabilizing. Creek's vision blurred as he steadied himself, glaring at the tactical display. Human dreadnoughts were closing in, their formations tight and unyielding. "How could they know?" Creek rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "How could they have planned this trap?" Jex didn't answer, too focused on issuing damage control orders. The bridge crew moved with frantic precision, but it was clear that panic was starting to set in. Creek could feel it too, a gnawing dread that clawed at his insides. The collective had never faced an enemy like this, one that used its own brutality and resilience as weapons. "Admiral," Jex said suddenly, his tone urgent. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship." Creek hesitated, his pride battling with the fear in his gut. Put it through. The viewscreen flickered, and the image of a human officer appeared. A woman in a dark uniform, her face calm and stern, with piercing eyes that seemed to look straight into Creek's soul. It was Commander Elena Price, the same voice from the distress call. "This is Commander Price of the EFS Resolute," she announced, her tone cold and unyielding. "Your fleet is surrounded and crippled. Surrender now or be annihilated." Creek bared his mandibles defiantly, unwilling to show weakness even now. "You are a primitive race, Commander. You may win this battle, but the collective will never yield to creatures like you." Price's expression remained impassive. "You made a mistake, Admiral. You thought we were weak because we value life and freedom. You didn't understand that those values make us fight harder than any conqueror. You cornered us, and now you'll face the consequences." Creek snarled. "We will never submit to your kind. We are superior." Before he could finish, Price cut him off with a slight smirk. "Superior. Your entire fleet is in ruins. Your ground forces are scattered and leaderless. You underestimated humanity, Admiral. You thought our compassion made us soft. Instead, it made us relentless. This is your only chance to surrender." The transmission ended abruptly, and Creek felt a wave of helplessness crash over him. He turned to Jex, who looked pale and fearful. "Status on ground forces?" Jex hesitated, his mandibles clicking nervously. They've gone dark, Admiral. Human resistance on the surface has overwhelmed them. We lost contact an hour ago." Creek felt his confidence finally break. All his plans, his dreams of conquest, shattered by an enemy he had dismissed as inferior. He had led his fleet into a slaughterhouse, and there was no escape. His pride had blinded him, and now it was too late to turn back. "Send the surrender signal," Creek croaked, his voice devoid of strength. "We cannot fight this." Jex glanced at him with something resembling pity. "Yes, Admiral." The signal went out, and the human fleet ceased fire, maintaining their blockade as shuttles moved in to secure the remains of the collective armada. Creek slumped into his command chair, numb with defeat. In his mind, he could still hear Zaltek's warning, the old warrior's grim prophecy about humanity's indomitable spirit. As silence settled over the bridge, Creek couldn't help but reflect on how he had dismissed the humans as primitive and weak. He had seen their fierce resistance as desperation rather than resolve. Now he understood. Humans didn't fight for conquest or glory. They fought because giving up was never an option. Just then, a soft chime signaled an incoming transmission from the Council. Creek forced himself upright, activating the link. The holographic figure of Grand Chancellor Vrol appeared, an imposing figure with segmented armor and piercing yellow eyes. "Creek!" Vrol hissed, his voice laced with anger. "You have disgraced the collective. Your reckless assault has cost us the pride of our fleet. Explain yourself." Creek struggled to find words, but there was nothing he could say to justify his failure. "I underestimated them, Chancellor. They fought, like demons. They knew we were coming. They laid a trap. They turned our strength against us." Vrol's glare was icy. "You ignored Zaltek's counsel. You failed to comprehend the nature of your enemy. Your arrogance has doomed us all." The transmission cut off, leaving Creek to face the bitter reality of his defeat. He looked at Jex, who had remained silent, his expression conflicted. "They'll never let us go, will they?" Creek murmured, almost as if speaking to himself. Jex hesitated, his wings folding back in resignation. "No, Admiral. Once provoked, they will hunt us to the ends of the galaxy. You showed them our weakness, and they will never forget." Creek lowered his head, the weight of his failure pressing down like a crushing tide. He had unleashed a force beyond his understanding, an indomitable will to survive that no conqueror could break. As the human shuttles approached, Creek could only wonder how many more worlds would burn before the collective finally learned the lesson that had cost him everything. As Creek sat in the ruined command chair of the Dominator, his mind spiraled into dark contemplation. The humans had subdued his fleet, captured his flagship, and now held him prisoner on his own bridge. He could feel the hum of human transport shuttles docking, the clang of magnetic locks securing their grip on the ship. Collective warriors were being herded like livestock, stripped of their weapons and pride. Jex stood silently at the comms console, his wings drooping with defeat. Creek couldn't muster the energy to berate him or anyone else. His failure was absolute, and he could no longer hide behind arrogance or excuses. The bridge doors slid open with a sharp hiss, and Commander Elena Price entered, flanked by 2 heavily armed soldiers in sleek combat armor. Her expression was calm, but calculating, her eyes sweeping the room with a practiced air of authority. Creek forced himself to sit up straighter, trying to salvage some remnant of dignity. "So," Price began, her tone neutral, "you're the infamous Admiral Creek, the one who thought humanity would kneel at his feet." Creek glared at her, his mandibles clicking. "You caught us by surprise, a dishonorable tactic." Price arched an eyebrow. "Surprise? You announced your intentions the moment you wiped out Arcadia. You didn't think we would remember? Plan? Adapt? Humanity isn't like your past conquests. You tried to crush us once, and we swore it would never happen again." Creek's pride flickered to life, pushing back his despair.